Welcome everybody to our talk of Connecta. Integrate anything using Connecta, Odoo's #1 connection suite. I will show you why. First of all, you can scan the QR code if you want to be able to ask questions during the talk. You can just note them down, and then in the end we can answer them. So I guess some people are scanning now. All right, so let's get started. About me, I'm Hilko, I'm the co-founder of Connecta. I'm an enterprise architect and also the lead developer of the software. So first question, why would you connect Odoo in the first place, right? So to let Odoo make a safe landing in your organization, it's always good to have connections to other systems. You can integrate with suppliers, you can purchase and sales order synchronization to other systems. You connect with legacy systems that you already have in your organization and you can't get rid of. And of course, small things like shipping confirmations and mass data imports, which are somewhat bigger, of course. So how is this usually done? You have some custom code for every connection that you need. And this means high costs for construction and maintenance. And most of the times it's quite difficult to discover what the custom code does. So where's your data going and what happens when things go wrong? Most of the times you don't really know. And your upgrades are tied to developer availability. So if the developer doesn't have time for you, you're kind of stuck. And there is no real insight of what your data is doing in your system. So the new approach is Connecta. And what is Connecta, actually? It's a no-code, low-code connection suite, and it runs right inside your Odoo database. So there's no third party involved here. You manage all your incoming and outgoing connections right inside the tool. And why is Connecta a good idea? So you can connect using industry standards, and every system should be connectable. So we aim to provide connections to everything that's out there in the industry, even the funky ones. So sometimes you have implementations that people made, they're hobbyists or something, but you need to connect. They do funky stuff. We allow you to connect to those as well, because sometimes it's just a requirement of the project. So we offer a real-time and historical dashboard of everything that's happening with your connections. So as soon as something happens in Odoo, you can instantly see what's happening. This is really useful during development as well. You can monitor all data exchanges. So as soon as one party sends some data to Odoo, you can actually see that happening. Also, what happened deep in the night, for example. We offer some really user-friendly field mapping tools for your outgoing and incoming messages. So this is how you translate your incoming data to Odoo. And one of the key features is that you can transform your data before it enters Odoo or before it leaves Odoo. So you can apply some logic that the other system really relies on. So this is an example. This is just a JSON message. You can paste it in a tool. You can tell the system to create a field map for me, and it's ready to be used. So you can map inside Odoo. You can look up the fields, and then we now mapped one field to Odoo. And also here, next to the cursor, you see the transform option with the functions. That's where you apply your data manipulation functions. We also offer a way to build your logic quite easily. So we have a drag and drop interface, because as soon as a message enters Odoo, what happens, right? This is the way that we allow you to do so and define your logic. So we just dragged in a building block. On the left side, you have some input settings, what goes into the building block. So this is, we're now making a connection to another system. We can define what kind of info needs to go where, and the output we can assign to a variable. So this is a bit technical, but we're still making connections, right? It's logic that we actually need to define somewhere, and we allow you to do that visually. So So for example, when the a request is successful, you can do some other steps, you can run a database query, and then in the end you can update an Odoo record, for example. And every building block has their own settings that you can configure. You can also stop flows, of course. So this is just a basic example how you can use the flow designer to define your logic. We also allow you to see deep traceability of everything that happens. So the building blocks have their own logging. They show you what came into the building block and what comes out of it. And as soon as there are errors, they're really clearly visible. So everything is logged and auditable. So if you need to see what happened deep in the night, for example, you can actually see what went on in your system. So this is an example of a flow that had been running. You can see what happens. You can see the settings that came in on the left. This is the message that came back. You can pretty-find a message so you can actually see what's happening. These are just small tools that help you to actually get a control of what your data does. So here's one of the errors that were found. Yeah, as you can imagine, this is really useful if you want to debug your connection, but also sensitive steps in your organization that you really make sure that you know what's happening. You can always keep the log on. So yeah, to make sure that you have a control of what's happening. Okay, so one of the way Odoo communicates is their own API, but what if you want to offer your own API endpoints to other parties? So you can use the API endpoint designer, which allows you to define an endpoint and people can send in certain data, but you can define what kind of data. And this is based on the Open API standard. So as soon as you have your own API in another platform, you can just import it and your endpoints are ready to go. One of the things we ran into was how do you design in staging, for example on the Odoo SH platform, and how do you push them to production, right? These are settings that you define in the database. We give you an export and import tool. You can just check the items that you build with Connecta, and you can also import them in your production, for example. But you can also make backups of your settings. You just get a zip, that's an export, you can save it, and then you have a state of what you have made. So this is the way to move your staging or your data and your settings, not your data, but the settings from staging to production. So when you have Connecta, the Odoo upgrades are included in your license. So whenever we move, we just have Odoo version 19 available. So Connecta will be also supported on the latest platform, and then your settings just move from your previous version of Connecta to the new one. And Connecta is built with Odoo SH in mind. So we make sure that the funky stuff that Odoo SH has, for example, they kill scripts after 15 minutes. We have workarounds that make sure that when you have 1 million records that you want to import, that the script just keeps going in a way that's friendly to Odoo, because we respect the platform, we don't want to overrun it. And all the funny stuff that Odoo SH has for protection of Odoo, of course, we make sure that we align with those so it works on Odoo SH. Our pricing is predictable, and you have a much faster setup of everything related to building connections. And you don't have any data limits or rating. There is a step-based licensing. So you start with 1 connection, you can build to 3 connections, and eventually you have the unlimited license, where you can just go full out with 20, 30 connections. Okay, so what's new in Connecta? We have some latest features, and one of them is the toolbox. And the toolbox allows you to quickly access information in Odoo. So you're building your connection, but you need, for example, the model browser, because which field are in what model, how are they called? There's an easy way to actually open the model browser right from the left bottom corner. You open the model browser, you pick from a selection field, you pick the model, and then you can see all the insights of that model. But we have more settings that you have. You have your flows, you have your mappings, your sync setups. Everything you define in Connecta, you can quickly access it using the toolbox, which is this a small pop-up in the bottom left. We also have a notification center added for alerts, because when something happens with your data, and probably possibly at night, for example, you want to make sure that you are alerted when things go wrong. So you can hook up alerts on things that go wrong. So for example, 5 errors within the last 10 minutes, you can get an email or anything you prefer. But it's also the other way around, right? So if you expect some information to come in, like we expect at least 5 orders per hour, what happens when you don't get any orders for an hour or 2 hours? The system doesn't get any errors because there are no orders, but we expect orders. So we can hook notifications in that scenario, like if I don't get any information in 2 hours, I want to get notified because the other system probably has an error then. So this is how you can stay up to par with whatever happens inside Connecta. And of course, inside your own Odoo. We also added the getting started feature, which means that you can just answer some questions. So these are the 3 questions from the opening screen. You want to retrieve some data, you want to send some data, or you want to let others send or retrieve data. And you just go step by step through these questions, and then it finalized, the final screen will tell you, well, then you need these items in Connecta to build what you need. We also added real-time data streaming. This is something I personally believe very strongly in, that this will be a much bigger way of communicating in the upcoming years. And at the moment, you can already connect to the industry's message brokers. Kafka is like the really common one that people use. PubSub, Solas. Solas is really the enterprise version of it. But you can hook up to these message brokers, and what that basically does is it opens a connection to one of these systems, and whenever a message comes in, it pushes it to Odoo. But Connecta makes sure that Odoo only handles one message at a time, because these systems are designed to take care of millions of messages per second, which Odoo doesn't probably like. So we make sure that you have an open connection, but Odoo decides how fast things are processed. This also means that you don't have any overhead of connections that you make to APIs, for example, because when you send a message via a regular API, it opens the connection, you have some overhead of that time-wise. You send a message, you close the connection, and you do it again. You open the connection, you close the connection. This way you have an open line, and whenever a message arrives, Connecta makes sure that Odoo wakes up, because it's being put to sleep most of the time when you're not using it, and then it gets processed. We also have an AI connection assistant. So one of the things when you're building connection is, what is my documentation like? So in this case, we ask, which is, by the way, accessible via the toolbox I just showed you earlier. We asked, how do I connect Shopify? And it just gives you step by step how you define it in Connecta. And it also gives you some endpoints already. You can just keep asking, okay, give me all the endpoints for the product. And then it allows you to actually define those endpoints right inside Connecta. So this is really a helpful assistant, which makes sure you don't have to Google everything all the time or go through extensive documentation. Okay, so this is more like the tool. We also have a way for you guys to become a partner of Connecta. Connecta is in essence an open platform. So our ecosystem allows you to join the affiliate program, which in practice means that you sell Connecta to your own customers, especially if you are a partner of Odoo, for example, and you can earn recurring commission for that. And on top of that, you can sell your own Connecta services. So if people need some connections that are with legacy systems, you are allowed to just build them yourself and charge whatever you like for it. We also have a marketplace which is accessible right within Connecta, within their own Odoo of the user, the customer. You can buy ready-to-go connectors. So this means that you buy them right from within Odoo, and you one-click install them right inside Connecta, thus right inside their own Odoo. And then the connection is ready to go. You can offer some settings that differ per business, but yeah, there's one general connection that you can configure a bit, but it's ready to go. So if you want to be you want to be the one that makes the apps, you can join the partner program. You can build your own Connecta apps. You can earn recurring income. Most of it is for the app builder. And you can sell to your internal client base, which is one of the options. Or if you're really confident that you understand the system you communicate with, you can go public. So that means that everybody that has Connecta can buy your app, and you're also able to support the app and sell maybe extra consultancy hours for it. So thank you. Let's Connecta. All right, so this is the pad again. If you have any questions, you feel free to ask them. Oh, okay.
Is the microphone on?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for this conference. We have quite a few questions for you here.
Okay.
So let's start with the first one. One customer is using Navision at the moment as single source of truth for customer information. Is it possible to update once per night the information in Odoo based on the change that should be updated? Is it possible, and when? And when yes, how would you identify change record in the navigator?
Okay, so it kind of depends. We have, does the other system push information, or do we receive information from the other system, which is the same, or do we pull information in? So this is the start. And then as soon as you have a synchronization set up between the records, that means when you have the ID of the other system and also the ID in Odoo, it just synchronizes the record. So you can do an update of the Odoo record instead of creating a new one. If the synchronization wasn't created yet, you can choose to create the Odoo record instead. Yeah.
Thank you. So the second one is, can I export my Connecta settings and import them in a database of a colleague which have a slightly different Odoo configuration? And can you provide assistance if I need help? Or Connecta app correspond to the same settings, correspond to some settings?
Right. So the way to share settings is by using the apps. So that's the way that you offer your export. The export and imports are bound to your local license, but when you go public with your settings, you are allowed to build the apps and share those. Those come with settings panels you can configure yourself. And then when a colleague has some other settings, you can just make it a setting, and in your flow you can change the logic depending on if the setting is off or on. Yeah.
Thank you. Where can I find the standard connection that are available now?
It's right in the App Store. We are going to launch a public page on our website which will have the apps also that are also available in the App Store. You can also visit our booth if you want to know more about the actual connection that we offer now. We also have ready-to-go configuration with systems that you can then use to build your own logic. So you can connect, but then there's still some logic that you need to define what happens in Odoo.
Thank you. What kind of connection are possible with Connecta? Can I connect with OO2?
Right, this is a login mechanism, so you can define a connection to an API, and then one of the login mechanisms will be OAuth2. There are plenty in the industry, but we aim to support everything, also the funky login mechanisms.
Thank you. How do you control the rules into integration, mandatory field, validation, or constraint?
Right, so first of all, Odoo decides what the constraints are, right? Your model decides, does this field allow to have some text, or does it require a number? So Odoo is boss here. We only allow you to enter some data into the model, and Odoo will do its validation. If you want to check beforehand, you can do so in the mapping. You can change some values, or you can do some checks that everything works correctly, and also in the flows, you can really make choices depending on what data comes in. Yeah.
Thank you. Is it possible to install in on-premise versions?
Right, so at the moment we said it is aimed at Odoo SH. However, as soon as you have the same Python version at the moment as Odoo SH runs, because that's a stable version per Odoo version, then you can absolutely already download it. If you have like certain on-premise requirements, we can also make sure that Connecta will run there.
Thank you. What do you mean when you refer to upgrades?
Odoo 18 to Odoo 19. You can just download the Odoo 19 version, and you can. It's all included in the same license. You don't need a new license per Odoo version.
Thank you. There is a second one that is slightly similar to the one I just asked you, but with few more details. So they ask if it's possible to connect to on-premise databases that are currently using VPN or tunnel IP. How do you guarantee end-to-end?
Oof, that's an interesting one, right? So I have to look into that, because that means that you have to open a secure connection probably. But this is an edge case we haven't yet encountered. So we will make sure it will work, but we need to figure it out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How do you take care of security in general, certificate?
Yeah,
SSL?
so we rely on the security of Odoo itself, of course, because it's running inside Odoo. So Odoo on default has their own security. We are not a third party that changes settings. We make sure that we rely on the mechanisms for logging in with the API keys. That's all managed by Odoo itself. We're not changing that. Yeah, we make sure that the security remains as Odoo does it. Yeah.
Thank you. So each package has a price limit based on the number of active connectors with no data transmission limit?
Right, it's the you have channels, which are basically groups of settings, and the license depends on how many groups you have. So a channel is a group in our case. So the actual question is, there's no data transmission limit at all. You just have the X amount of channels that you can use. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, the last one is building an API for being consumed in an external service like mobile app, for example, possible to be done with Connecta.
Okay, you can definitely build an API with Connecta, because especially with mobile apps, you don't want to transfer you want to transfer as less information as possible on mobile devices, of course. You can build the API, and you can also define which data goes out of Odoo to the mobile phone and what you allow to come in. So yes, that's definitely possible.
Thank you. That was the
All right.
final questions. Thank you
You're
for your
welcome.
conference.